Recently I found this little map I drew like almost 10 years ago, which I later remade in Inkarnate. And while it's definitely not great, it is still special to me, because this is the very first world map I've ever drawn for a campaign. And it was also my longest lasting campaign. We ran it for a bit over 3 years. But why am I showing you this map? Well, it has a pretty big flaw and I wonder if you have spotted it by now. It's way, and I mean way too big. I've played with this group bi-weekly for 3 years and yet we only got to explore about half of it. And this is of course demotivating as a GM, putting all this work into world building and drawing a cool map only for half of it never to actually see the light of day. How could I have designed the campaign better and more efficiently? By focusing on what's actually important. And this is today's topic, how to properly design your very first campaign. Let's go! No matter if you're planning an epic story, a simple dungeon crawl or a political intrigue, it's best to start small. Think of the smallest point you can start with. For a classic fantasy campaign, that is usually a settlement where your players start their big adventure. It's tempting to go for a world map right away, but you won't need all that stuff at the beginning. If you really like mapping, map out a small region. That can be helpful when you're thinking about how the settlements work together and how far apart stuff is. But you don't actually really need it. But back to the starting point. I recommend a village. If you want to go for something like a big city, start with a single district. But if it's your first campaign, the smaller, the better. For a village, you don't really need much information to go. But the things that are really important are the name and population, obviously. Why does the village even exist? And what is their culture like? Let's start with the reason it exists, which is usually deeply tied to the village's economy. Are they self-sufficient? Or are they exporting something? And what are they exporting? Great economies for villages are logging, fishing, mining, and of course agriculture. They will need wood and some kind of food for themselves, no doubt, but there are also great goods they might want to export. Tobacco, fancy wine, wool, or that renowned cheese. Wood is an important good not only for building, but also for making paper. How else are those wizards gonna write down all their spells? So they might run a paper mill around here. And mining metals, I don't think I have to emphasize how important those are in a world full of monsters. Do I? This gives you a great opportunity for world building right there already. But we also need something that makes this village special. Culture. The style of clothing they wear, the religion they follow. Which pantheon do they pray to? Do they practice animism? Or do they worship their ancestors? And don't forget monotheism. I mean, if they can find a god that has enough hours in the day to see to every single detail that is, it's doubtful. And from there, you need people to inhabit this village of yours, of course. Your players will probably need some kind of vendors. They'll want some quest hooks and they'll definitely want a tavern. For the NPCs, I simply write a single sentence description, give them a name and connect them to the adventure somehow. Which means either giving them a secret, letting them know a rumor, or have a goal that connects them to an adventure location. For the description, I just take 2 to 3 distinct features. What do they look like? Move like? How do they talk? How do they smell? And write that down in one sentence. If you don't want to think of names, descriptions and all that kind of stuff, that's no problem either. There are great random generators online which you'll find with a bit of googling, but I'll also link some in the description. You can find them right under the like and subscribe buttons. So, you've got your village and some NPCs, but that's of course not enough to send your players adventuring. For that you need actual adventuring locations, dungeons, wizard towers, abandoned mines, all that kind of stuff. You technically only need one of those for session 1, but I like preparing 3 of them for several reasons. First, it gives your players a choice which hook they want to follow. Second, you'll need more locations down the line anyway. And thirdly, you can interconnect adventure locations and think of an overarching conflict if you want to. I prefer several hooks per location that stem from different settlements, NPCs and adventure locations. It makes the world feel alive and interconnected. It makes those problems feel bigger if they influence not just one guy in one single village, but change the lives of many people all over the region. But back to the locations. You can use random generators, of course, and I found a really nice one from Watabou, whose generators I also used for the village maps you saw earlier. You can find the links to both of these in the description, of course. This generator gives you a map for a dungeon as well as a little lore and room descriptions. And that's how I use it. I reroll a few times, write down stuff that I find inspiring and use a map that looks cool for what I'm planning. You can even change the map a little, like you can raise the water level and give the dungeon some text like being a tomb, a temple, small or big. Once you have a location, it's time to think about who lives there. Some monster or bandits, for example. I love just flipping through monster books until I see something where I just have a cool idea immediately. Or you can of course roll on a random table. But we also gotta connect those locations to our starting village. No quest hooks, no adventure. Let's say we rolled up a little dungeon and decided to put a hag in there. Now we need some rumors. The local hunters swear that animals have got more aggressive around and they've found weird twig fetishes hanging in the trees. To get the directly involved NPC, you can have a woman storming into the tavern as your players are sitting there drinking, because that's what they do. Her child has gone missing. It was last seen walking into the forest as if charmed. And when others wanted to follow, thorns closed the path, allowing no one to follow. For wilderness travel, you can have encounters hint at adventure locations. For the hag, you could use a treant, an ancient tree feeling weak recently because some kind of monster has started poisoning the forest with its magic. Wildlife attacks, the eyes are bloodshot and the bodies twitch as if they were puppets and someone else was holding the strings. I also love putting something big and something mundane in those random encounters. Some stuff that's not supposed to be fought but interacted with in other ways. Peasants on a pilgrimage to a holy site. Traveling merchants making a stop before their next settlement. A devil ready to strike a deal for someone's soul. And of course a dragon in the far distance, burning down a village or doing whatever dragons do. Make sure scenes that players get into serve a bigger picture. They should always point at something going on. And if the players go to different villages and still have unresolved adventure locations, just bring them in as well. I'm sure you have realized that this approach is very location-based. I wouldn't think about the big meta plot going on in the background from the get-go. You got so much stuff to take care of for your very first session anyway, and you might not know your players yet. So, take the first session to figure out what is fun to them. Maybe they had a lot of fun with some scene you thought wasn't important at all and they solved it in a completely different way than you imagined, siding with the villain or redeeming them or whatever. So you suddenly want to expand on this plot hook that you thought was unimportant. You should have some kind of overarching idea in mind for the region you're playing in though, like what kind of conflict is going on in this land. Maybe a dark hag coven has recently lost a member and the remaining two are looking for a replacement. Potential candidates have to prove they are worth their salt by committing the most disgusting cruel acts to impress the two sisters left. That's why you get the hag from earlier. And that's why a necromancer is causing terror in the region. And it's also why the spider thing here has started forming a weird spider cult. And of course, that explains why there are cultists and undead monstrosities in our random encounter tables. And why townfolks are talking about an evil rider dragging innocent people away to their certain doom. I try not to plan a regional plot that takes more than, let's say, 10 sessions at most. Because just like too big a map can become frustrating down the line, so can a plot if it's planned too far ahead. During actual play, I only ever plan my next session. But that's actually a topic for a different video, I think. And if you have watched until here, thank you! I'd really love to hear what you think about this video in the comments and also what you'd like to see more of in the future. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe. And maybe watch this video next. You get a new video next week and as always, and until then, enjoy your game and have a great week.